plus 1. And clearly I'm not. This isn't a quarantine. Laggardly PC tech. Anyway, with any luck, this time tomorrow we'll be reporting live from Constitution Dock, but we thought we might just give everybody a quick update. Australia, in Sydney rather. It's been a pretty epic overnight, with a very punchy sea, really nasty short waves, and unfortunately resulted in quite a number of retirements. So as of still coming through pretty regularly, we have 32 retirements. We've got 56 boats still racing, so that's a much reduced fleet. And impressively, out of the 17 two-handers, we've still got 13 that are sailing, so they're clearly nutted it out last night and are hoping to sort of see this through and into the next and very difficult phase. So why quite so many retirements? Because the winds themselves were really not excessive. 25 to 30 knots in Hobart terms is really pretty average stuff. What really probably caused the damage, and we can only surmise, not having had live reports from most of the boats, is that the seas were very confused. So you've got a 2-knot south-going current, further offshore admittedly, from the New South Wales coast. You've then got a pretty strong southerly stream, southeasterly stream coming up, and then the third complication, which probably made it particularly difficult for the front runners this morning, is an east-going tidal current at the bottom of the mainland as well. So very short, confused seas, and it's not the height of the seas that's the problem for most. And when we spoke to Adam Brown yesterday from Guilo, talking a little bit about those seas, he said they would have very short backs on them. So effectively you can launch off those, putting your bow in, going from 7 knots to nothing, and you can imagine that strain that puts on the rig, the sails and everything else. And if you look at the damage list, basically a good deal of forestays, backstays, rig damage, and in one case hull damage. Pretty disappointing when you've prepared for all of that, but that's as it is. What was equally interesting, and I don't know whether you've had a chance, but please do have a quick look at our video interview we did with Mark Bradford, the skipper of Blackjack, on Christmas Eve, is actually what you need to do to get through that first phase, because the second half of the race is going to be a very different animal indeed. And in talking about that for the 100-footers, when he's got on Blackjack and indeed on Scallywag substantially less righting moment, their main move last night was acid. In other words, stay close enough to Law Connect, but ensure that you are not pushing too hard, so that when the lighter airs come, which they are now going to appear, they're ready and able. And that's been very evident by the way that Blackjack has taken her route. So we might just go to the screen here, and I'll just show you quickly, if Jake will just move in here, the routes of Blackjack. So in red here we've got Blackjack down here, and you can see that if I scroll her route here, she's been following the coast. So she went out, she was originally talking about perhaps going out to sea, but you can see that she's tacked all the way down the coast. Just go back to that again, and come in pretty close, about 5 or 6 nautical miles from Maria, in fact, out here, and then during the night. So she's really, as they say, following the rum line, which is the blue straight line between inshore from her, Stefan Racing. In immediately behind her is SHK Scallywag, about 18 nautical miles behind, and you'll see that her route is much further out. And again, if you go back further to Law Connect, and admittedly showing no, she's obviously got some comms issues with the tracker here, but again you can see that she went wide as well. So it seems to have paid dividends and probably was protecting the asset, not getting out into the really lumpy stuff outside here for Blackjack. So when we spoke to Mark about it, when we asked him what was his tactics once they were through first night, he said the chief tactic is actually getting to Flinders Island. Here we are, this is Flinders Island here. And the reason for that, I'll show in a moment, is to do with the weather pattern from here. So perhaps if we go from here, we might just talk briefly a little bit about some of the standings. Let's have a look. So, oops, we can just scroll down a bit. If we go to the standings here and then go to the line honours, obviously Blackjack, Scallywag, and then Stefan Racing. In the fully crewed IRC, this has been moving around a bit. Great to see Mark DeBritko from Queensland and his Beneteau here doing pretty well. He's been bouncing around between first and third. At one point, Ichiban was doing well. Oh, go back to where we were. And Ichiban, again, just bouncing around. So when you look at down here, you'll see what an incredible mix of boats we've got here on IRC, and this will change a great deal over the next sort of 12 hours as the breezes completely change. So we've got everything from sort of the larger boats in here right the way through to Shane Cairns, White Bear, Zero, all in the mix, Smuggler and others and so on and so forth. Eve, some of the older boats, the wonderful old classic Sparkman and Stevens Love and War. So that's telling you a great deal about how well people went during last night, because that was pretty tricky for everybody. But it's all going to change pretty heavily. Interestingly, too, if we could just go through good work in for Solera, the Victorian boat. And then if we go through to the two-handed IRC, we see that Jan Scholten and Jules Hall are doing really well on Disco Trooper Contender with Euphoria, and then the third, and Wendy and crew. So 13 still sailing here, which is pretty good, and then including Rupert Henry's fantastic Lombard Class 40, which had backstay problems. Pretty hard yards for them. They've spent the last 6 weeks just trying to get ready with a new mast after they broke the last one, and overnight they were out of the race. One thing to watch for here is this this point here, which is the arrival time. So you just need to be careful with the tracker. These arrival times, as I understand it, are actually based on the average speed to date. So if we go back to full line honours here, you'll notice that it's saying 28th December 4:22 for Blackjack. That would be optimistic at the best when you consider where we are. And perhaps in a moment I'll just then show you where we're going from here in terms of the weather that will dictate that it's unlikely to be anywhere like that. In terms of favourites overall, it's so hard to pick at the moment. It's going to be who threads the needle best with all of these holes, as they're called. But interestingly, talking to the guys on Hutzbar, pretty much Bruce was sort of saying he had a feeling that could be Midnight Rambler, Ed Saltus's boat. He's got an extraordinary ability to find gaps, and those boats are ideally suited to this. All right, so let's move on to the weather now and just talk about a little bit about why this is all going to change. So Predict Wind, God bless them, they're fantastic, because for a layperson like me, who knows very little really about absolutes of weather, you can at least in a visual sense get some idea of how this is all going to work. So let's just zoom out for a moment to the wider context of Australia, and that matters to sort of understand what's actually going on in that wider context. So, so easy. Here we go. So what we can see here is that they've got what's called a blocking high, if you like, which is down here. So all of this area down here is a long high, all in the same piece. You can see the green through here. So the purple and blue are very light airs, the red are the stronger airs. And this blocking high is effectively, if we sort of pull down a little bit here, you'll see that all of the normal streams that come through the Southern Ocean through here and push all the way through Bass Strait and so on, and cause all those high winds for much of the year, have all got shoved south. So the Imokas, the big round the world guys these days, they come in on these rotating lows all the way through the Southern Ocean, and they're so fast they can actually hold on to a whole weather pattern all the way through here. That's really just down to the speeds they can now actually generate. They don't have to avoid them. They get on the top end of one of those. But what you'll see here is, of course, that this is a counter-rotating. So these highs in the southern hemisphere, it goes the other way in the northern hemisphere, they counter-rotate with the wind. So that's why we're getting this southeast stream coming through. Is that if we roll this whole process forward progressively, so this is around now, about now with this high here, what you'll see is this high starts extending, blowing out to the west of the west of the of Tasman mainland. So let's just scroll forward and let's go into Tuesday. So here we are, this is Tuesday 10 in the morning, this is tomorrow. Now suddenly you can see where we are. So Blackjack, who's been here, go back one. So she's now here. She's still doing about 13 to 15 knots because she's getting plenty, doing about 210 towards Flinders Island. washout which is coming out from here out to the east, so that she can at least get somewhere down the shore. The shore of the east coast of Tasman Island. And in the forecasting you'd have heard from the BOM, they were talking in fact about overnight sea breezes, which effectively is where in the daytime obviously the sea breezes come in towards the land. At night time with the land cooler and so on, then you actually get the breezes coming offshore. So if we sort of scroll this slowly forward, if Jakey's saying, and you can see how the winds are beginning to lighten on that eastern side here, and in fact if anything they're sort of coming up the south, and then as we scroll further forward into Tuesday they start going west, because this high is starting to move out now. Sea getting pretty tricky. So all the guys who've been back in here now, they've got a really hard yards through here. They've got to thread the needle some way through all of these, and you'll see how quickly those can change and how local those moves are. And what that means is, just going backwards and forwards here, you can see these sort of amoeba-like forms. Be in a position somewhere here, and you can have no wind and glassed out, and there's a guy behind you or beside you suddenly gets new breeze. It's so local, and really a lot of that is not just good management and tactics, it's actually down to just sheer good luck. So threading the needle is going to be hugely complex, and you can see why it's likely, obviously as we run this one, that you wouldn't be seeing blackjack or any of the 100 footers in here anytime soon. And by now, which is now into Wednesday the 29th in the morning, you can see there's almost like this massive blockage here you've got to get through. There's no way you're going around the outside. You've got to find some way coming down here. So you're going to be depending on night sea breezes. Even on some of the steeper land up here, you get what's called katabatic winds. So they're winds that are coming down off the cliffs. They can be pretty fierce and they can be pretty punchy. But you're just going to be taking, as Mark Bradford said the other day in his interview, you're just using every little opportunity you can go to get south. And that's really the key for the whole thing here. So it's going to be an interesting next couple of days, and for the guys at the back, really hugely complex. So what was interesting about the first phase here was, in all of this phase when we were coming down from Sydney, was that effectively the person in control of most of the boats at that point is the sailing master. What you've got to be able to do is to actually save your boat and keep it pushing at just exactly the right amount, far enough here that you can actually get into that. Phase there, and then you hand over to the navigators, because the navigators, if you think the sailing master was tired after last night, boy, the navigators are going to get very little sleep over this period of time as we go through there. So I think that gives you a pretty good summary. Hopefully we can be back in Hobart, down in Hobart tomorrow sometime. We're hoping to fly down, PCRs and other things included. And yep, it's going to be game on for the rest of the race in a very different form. Probably many fewer retirements now. I think they'll fall away and the frustration levels will go. The interesting one in prospect. So look forward to seeing you down in Hobart. Bye for now.